The moment I discovered my own brother was planning to steal everything from me, I was sitting in his office, in the chair I had sat in 1,000 times before, looking at documents that were never meant for my eyes. The papers had been left on his desk, partially hidden under a folder, but visible enough that when I reached for a pen, I saw my name on the first page. What I read in those 60 seconds changed everything I believed about family, about loyalty, about the man I had spent my entire life looking up to. My brother Ryan, my business partner, my best friend since childhood, was methodically working to force me out of the company we had built together. The company our father had trusted us to run as a team. My name is Nathan, and this is the story of how I trusted my brother completely, how he betrayed me in ways I never imagined possible, and how I fought to take back everything he tried to steal from me. To understand the depth of this betrayal, you need to know about Harris Construction. Our father, George Harris, started the company 43 years ago with a pickup truck, a toolbox, and a willingness to work harder than anyone else in the business. He built houses at first, small residential projects in the suburbs of Philadelphia, doing most of the work himself while our mother handled the bookkeeping. By the time Ryan and I were old enough to hold hammers, Harris Construction had grown into a respected regional contractor with a reputation for quality and integrity. Ryan is 4 years older than me, and for most of my life, he was my hero. He was the one who taught me how to throw a football, how to talk to girls, how to navigate the social hierarchies of high school. He was charming in ways I never was, the kind of person who walked into a room and immediately became the center of attention. People loved Ryan. I loved Ryan. I would have done anything for him. We both joined the family business after college, Ryan with a business degree and me with an engineering background. Our father believed in the power of family, in the idea that blood would always be thicker than business disputes. He structured the company so that when he retired, Ryan and I would each own 40%, with the remaining 20% held in a family trust that would eventually pass to our children. He wanted us to be equal partners, to complement each other's strengths, to carry his legacy forward together. For 15 years, that arrangement seemed to work. Ryan handled the client relationships, the marketing, the face of the company. I managed operations, the project planning, the actual construction work that was the foundation of everything we did. We were a good team, or at least I thought we were. Harris Construction grew from a regional contractor to a major player in commercial development across 3 states. We built shopping centers and office buildings and medical facilities. We employed over 300 people. We were living the dream our father had started with that pickup truck and toolbox. Our father died 2 years ago, peacefully in his sleep, after a long and fulfilling life. His death was hard on both of us, but it was also a transition we had been prepared for. He had spent years ensuring that the company would survive without him, that Ryan and I had the skills and resources to continue what he had built. At his funeral, Ryan and I stood together and promised that we would honor his legacy, that we would always put family first, that nothing would ever come between us. I believed those words when I said them. I think Ryan was already planning something different. The signs were subtle at first. Ryan started scheduling meetings without including me, client dinners and strategy sessions that he claimed were last minute or not important enough to bother me with. He began making decisions about company direction without consultation, presenting them to me as done deals rather than proposals for discussion. He hired a new attorney, someone I had never met, to handle certain legal matters that he said were too specialized for our regular counsel. I noticed these changes, but did not assign them any sinister meaning. Ryan had always been more involved in the business development side of things, and I assumed he was just being more aggressive as we looked to expand into new markets. I trusted him. That was my fundamental mistake. I trusted him because he was my brother, because we had made promises to each other and to our father, because I could not imagine that blood could be so easily betrayed. The document I found on his desk was a draft agreement for a merger with Titan Development Group, one of the largest commercial contractors on the East Coast. The terms were detailed and specific. Harris Construction would be absorbed into Titan, with Ryan receiving a significant equity stake in the combined entity and a position as regional president. The document specified that all existing shareholders would be bought out at a price determined by an independent valuation, except for shares held by Ryan Harris, which would be converted to Titan equity. I read the section about my 40% ownership 3 times, trying to understand what I was seeing. My shares would be purchased at fair market value, determined by an appraiser selected by Titan. I would receive cash for my ownership stake and be given the opportunity to continue as a consultant for a period not to exceed 18 months. After that, I would have no connection to the company my father had started, the company I had helped build for 15 years. Ryan was selling Harris Construction out from under me. He was making a deal that would make him wealthy and powerful while cutting me out entirely. And he was doing it secretly, without any discussion or negotiation, presenting it as a fait accompli that I would have no choice but to accept. I did not confront him that day. I took photos of the documents with my phone, replaced everything exactly as I had found it, and walked out of his office with a smile that cost me more effort than anything I have ever done. I needed time to think, to understand what I was dealing with, to figure out how to respond to a betrayal I still could not fully believe was happening. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life. I had to continue working alongside Ryan, attending meetings and making decisions as if nothing had changed, while privately investigating the full scope of what he was planning. Every conversation felt like a performance, every interaction a test of whether I could maintain my composure while my entire world was being dismantled. Elena Vasquez, our CFO, was the first person I trusted with what I had discovered. Elena had been with Harris Construction for 8 years, and I had always found her to be honest and straightforward, the kind of person who valued integrity over politics. I asked her to meet me for coffee away from the office, and I showed her the photographs I had taken of the merger documents. Her reaction confirmed that what I was seeing was real. Elena told me that Ryan had been meeting with Titan executives for months, that he had directed her to provide financial information to their team without explaining why, that she had raised concerns about the unusual requests and been told to focus on her job and not ask questions. She had suspected something was wrong but had not imagined the full scope of what Ryan was planning. Elena also told me something that made the betrayal even more personal. Ryan had been telling Titan that I was a liability, that my operational approach was outdated and resistant to change, that the company would be more valuable without my involvement. He had positioned my removal not as a hostile act, but as a necessary business decision, claiming that I would never agree to the changes needed to take Harris Construction to the next level. He was not just cutting me out. He was using me as the justification for cutting me out, blaming me for problems that did not exist to make his betrayal seem reasonable. I consulted with David Thornton, a corporate litigation attorney who came highly recommended by a colleague who had dealt with a similar situation. David reviewed the documents and the corporate structure of Harris Construction, and he gave me both good news and bad news. The bad news was that Ryan, as CEO and majority shareholder when combined with certain board members he had cultivated, had significant power to pursue the merger. If he could get approval from the board and secure the necessary shareholder votes, he could potentially force through the Titan deal over my objections. The process would be contested and ugly, but it was not impossible. The good news was that Ryan had made mistakes. The secret negotiations violated his fiduciary duty to all shareholders, including me. The information he had provided to Titan about my role was potentially defamatory. And most importantly, the family trust that held 20% of the company had provisions that required unanimous consent from all family members for any major corporate transaction. Ryan had apparently overlooked this detail or assumed he could pressure or manipulate me into compliance. David's advice was clear. Do not confront Ryan yet. Gather more evidence. Build allies on the board. Prepare legal challenges that could be deployed if he tried to force the merger through. And most importantly, find out if there were other secrets, other aspects of his plan that I had not yet discovered. That last piece of advice led me to the most painful discoveries of all. With Elena's help, I began a quiet investigation into Ryan's activities over the past 2 years, since our father's death had left us as the sole leaders of the company. What we found painted a picture of systematic betrayal that went far beyond the Titan merger. Ryan had been siphoning money from the company for years, disguised as legitimate business expenses. He had created consulting agreements with shell companies that were owned by friends and associates, paying them hundreds of thousands of dollars for services that were never rendered. He had approved contracts with vendors who were giving him personal kickbacks, inflating costs that ultimately came out of company profits. He had used company funds for personal travel, entertainment, and gifts, all categorized as client development or business expenses. The total amount he had taken from Harris Construction exceeded $3 million over the past 5 years. Money that should have been reinvested in the company, shared with employees, or distributed to shareholders had instead gone directly into Ryan's pocket. But even that was not the worst of it. Elena discovered that Ryan had been in discussions with Titan for over a year, not just a few months as the recent documents suggested. And in those earlier discussions, the terms had been even more favorable to Ryan personally. He had negotiated a signing bonus of $2 million, contingent on the successful completion of the merger. He had secured guarantees for his children's employment at Titan. He had arranged for company assets to be transferred to his personal ownership before the merger closed, ensuring that they would not be included in the valuation that determined my buyout price. My brother had spent over a year meticulously planning to steal my inheritance, my career, and my future. Every lunch we had shared, every holiday gathering, every conversation about our father's legacy and our shared dreams for the company had been a performance. He had looked me in the eye and lied over and over while secretly working to destroy me. I asked Elena and David both the same question. Why? What had I done to deserve this? What was the motivation that could turn a brother into an enemy? Neither of them could answer with certainty, but they both offered theories that felt sickeningly plausible. Ryan had always been competitive, always needed to be the best, the most successful, the center of attention. Our father had treated us as equals in the business, but perhaps Ryan had never accepted that arrangement. Perhaps he had always believed he deserved more, that I was riding on his coattails, that the company would be better with him in sole control. Or perhaps it was simpler than that. Perhaps Ryan had simply become greedy, corrupted by the opportunity to take more than his share, willing to sacrifice family for money. Perhaps he had convinced himself that what he was doing was somehow justified, that I would be fine with my buyout, that the ends justified the means. I will never really know what was in his heart, but I know what was in his actions. And his actions were those of a man who had chosen to betray his brother in the most complete way possible. The confrontation happened on a Monday morning, 3 months after I first found those documents on his desk. By then, I had assembled a comprehensive case against Ryan. I had documentation of his financial improprieties, evidence of his secret negotiations with Titan, legal opinions supporting my right to block the merger, and commitments from 2 board members who were troubled by what I had shown them. I was prepared for a fight, but I still hoped that somehow, despite everything, we could find a resolution that did not destroy our family completely. I asked Ryan to meet me in the conference room where we had held countless meetings over the years, where we had celebrated wins and strategized through challenges and built something we were both proud of. He arrived with his usual confident smile, completely unaware that I knew what he had been doing. I told him that I knew about Titan. I told him that I knew about the merger negotiations, the terms that cut me out, the lies he had told about my role in the company. I watched his face as he processed that his secret was no longer secret, and I saw something I will never forget. For just a moment, before he recovered his composure, I saw rage. Not guilt, not embarrassment, not shame, rage that he had been caught, that his carefully constructed plan was falling apart, that I had somehow outsmarted him. His recovery was impressive, I have to admit. Within seconds, the rage was hidden behind a mask of wounded confusion. He tried to claim that I had misunderstood the documents, that the negotiations were preliminary, that he had always intended to involve me once the terms were finalized. He tried to suggest that this was actually good for both of us, that Titan was offering an opportunity we could not build on our own, that I should be grateful rather than angry. When those tactics did not work, he shifted to blame. He told me that the company needed changes I was unwilling to make, that my resistance to innovation was holding us back, that he had been forced to look for outside solutions because I refused to adapt. He said that our father would have understood that sometimes hard decisions had to be made for the good of the business, that I was being emotional rather than rational. I let him talk, let him cycle through his justifications and excuses, and then I told him about the other things I had discovered. The shell companies, the kickbacks, the $3 million in stolen money, the year of secret planning while he looked me in the eye and lied. His face changed again, and this time he could not hide what he was feeling. Fear. He had thought the Titan merger was his only vulnerability, but I had found the crimes that could send him to prison. What happened next will stay with me forever. My brother, the man I had looked up to my entire life, tried to bargain. He offered me a larger share of the Titan deal. He offered to pay back some of the money he had taken. He offered to delay the merger while we renegotiated terms. He was desperate, grasping at anything that might save him from the consequences of what he had done. And when bargaining did not work, he threatened. He told me that if I pursued this, if I exposed what he had done, he would destroy me in return. He claimed to have information about decisions I had made, about shortcuts I had allegedly approved, about things that would make me look just as guilty as he was. He was bluffing, I knew, but the willingness to threaten me was itself a revelation. There was no limit to what Ryan would do to protect himself. I left that meeting understanding that the brother I thought I knew had never really existed. The charming, confident, larger-than-life Ryan Harris had always been a performance, a mask worn by someone willing to betray anyone and anything for his own benefit. I had spent 38 years loving and trusting an illusion. The legal battle lasted 14 months. Ryan tried everything to prevent the consequences of his actions from catching up to him. He hired expensive attorneys to challenge every aspect of my claims. He attempted to turn board members against me, using the same charm and manipulation that had always worked for him. He went to employees with stories about my instability and vindictiveness, trying to build support for his version of events. But the evidence was overwhelming, and David Thornton was relentless in pursuing it. We filed suit against Ryan personally for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud. We presented evidence of his financial crimes to the board, forcing them to launch an independent investigation. We blocked the Titan merger by invoking the family trust provisions that required my consent. The investigation uncovered even more than Elena and I had found on our own. Ryan had been planning his takeover since before our father's death. He had secretly consulted with attorneys about ways to minimize my ownership stake, explored loopholes in the company's governing documents, and even attempted to recruit our father's personal attorney to his cause. When our father died, Ryan had accelerated his timeline, seizing the opportunity that the loss of the family patriarch had created. The forensic accountants eventually determined that Ryan had taken over $4 million from the company, not $3 million as we had initially calculated. Some of the theft had been so sophisticated that only expert analysis could uncover it. He had built an empire of deception over years, layer upon layer of fraud that had gone undetected because no one could imagine that Ryan Harris would betray his own family. The criminal referral came from the company's independent investigators, not from me directly. I did not want to be the one who sent my brother to prison, even after everything he had done. But the evidence was too clear, the crimes too serious, for the company to ignore. Ryan was charged with embezzlement, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. He pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence, but he still served 18 months in a federal facility. The civil suit was settled out of court after Ryan's criminal conviction. He agreed to surrender all of his shares in Harris Construction, to repay the money he had stolen with interest, and to sign a permanent non-competition agreement that prevented him from working in the construction industry. The settlement left him with nothing but his personal residence and whatever he could salvage from the wreckage of his finances. I bought out his stake in the company using funds that had been set aside for expansion. Harris Construction is now mine entirely. The family trust converted to shares that I control. I have spent the last 2 years rebuilding what Ryan tried to destroy, restoring relationships with clients and employees who had been caught in the crossfire of our family war, proving that the company's values had not died with my father or been corrupted by my brother. It has not been easy. Some people still associate Harris Construction with Ryan's crimes, with the scandal that played out in newspapers and courtrooms. Some employees left, uncomfortable with what they had witnessed or uncertain about the company's future. Some clients took their business elsewhere, unwilling to work with a company that had been so publicly dysfunctional. But we have survived, more than survived. We have grown. The employees who stayed are loyal in ways that come from shared adversity, and the new employees I have hired share the values that made this company worth fighting for. Our clients know that Harris Construction is a place of integrity now, that the cancer has been cut out and the healthy tissue remains. I think about Ryan sometimes, wonder where he is and what he is doing. After his release from prison, he moved to Arizona, far from Philadelphia, and the people who knew what he had done. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he tried to start a consulting business, that he married a woman he met after his divorce, that he never speaks about the family he betrayed. We have not talked since his sentencing. He did not reach out after his release, and I have not attempted to contact him. I do not know if I hate him or pity him, or simply feel nothing at all. The brother I loved was a fiction, and I cannot grieve for someone who never really existed. What I can do is honor the father who did exist, who built something worth protecting and trusted his sons to carry it forward. My father believed in family, believed that blood was thicker than business, believed that Ryan and I would find ways to work through any disagreements because we loved each other. He was wrong about Ryan, but he was not wrong about those values. They just could not survive a person who did not share them. I have a son now, born 2 years ago, named George after my father. When I hold him, I think about what kind of man he will grow up to be, what values I will teach him, what legacy I will leave him. I will tell him about his grandfather, about the company that started with a pickup truck and a toolbox, about the importance of integrity and hard work and keeping your promises. I will tell him about the importance of family, about loving the people who share your blood and your life. But I will also tell him about his uncle. I will tell him that some people cannot be trusted, that love and loyalty are not always reciprocated, that you have to be wise enough to protect yourself even from those closest to you. I will tell him that betrayal is possible from anyone, and that the ability to recognize it is as important as the ability to trust. I will tell him that I survived my brother's betrayal and came out stronger, that the company his great-grandfather built is now waiting for him if he wants it, that karma eventually finds those who deserve it, and that justice, while sometimes slow, is always worth pursuing. Ryan Harris spent years planning to cut me out of everything I had helped build. He thought he was smarter than me, more sophisticated, more willing to do what was necessary to win. He thought that by the time I discovered what he was doing, it would be too late for me to stop him. He was wrong. And now he has nothing, while I have everything. I do not say that with joy or satisfaction. There is no pleasure in what happened, no celebration in my brother's downfall. I would have given almost anything for this story to have ended differently. For Ryan to have been the person I believed he was. For us to have continued building our father's legacy together. But reality does not bend to what we wish were true. Ryan made his choices and I made mine. He chose betrayal and I chose to fight back. He chose to sacrifice his family for money and I chose to protect what mattered regardless of the cost. The truth was revealed. Justice was served. And the family business that was supposed to belong to both of us now belongs to me alone. I trusted my brother. He planned to cut me out completely, and in the end, he was the one who lost everything. That is my story. That is my testimony. And that is the consequence of betraying someone who trusted you with their whole heart.